The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, and welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. Today I'll be joined by Scott Roberts of National Pool Route Sales, and we're going to cover a gambit of topics, including purchasing a partial route or buying a route to start off your business. We're going to also talk about the large pool companies moving into the regions and taking over the areas there, as well as the inflation and bringing on an employee. So we're going to cover just a wide range of pool topics here in today's podcast. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Also receive priority service, enhanced rebate programs, a discount on your general liability insurance through SPA, a discount on your pool routing software through Skimmer, and an opportunity to co-brand with Leslie's on your social media, website, truck, and more. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. I'm joined by Scott Roberts from National Pool Route Sales. How you doing today, Scott?
Hey, David. Good to talk to you again. Everything's good.
Just real quick, why don't you give the listeners an idea of what you do for a living and what a pool broker is?
Yeah, sure. No problem. Thank you for that. So, like I said, my name is Scott Roberts from National Pool Route Sales. National Pool Route Sales started 35, 40 years ago. It was founded by Charles Baird. Many people have seen some of his videos when they're Googling for pool routes for sale. He'll pop up. He's the founder. He's in his 70s. He's a good man, and he started this whole idea of pool route sales years ago. And at this point, over the years, it's all we've been doing exclusively for 35, 40 years. So I handle Florida exclusively since I live in Florida, West Palm Beach area, and I handle all 67 counties in Florida for National Pool Route Sales. For all the buyers coming into the industry. I give ongoing mentoring for free. It's part of what we do. And from my experience of being in the business for many years.
We should touch on your background. You've been a pool service professional also before you were working for National Pool Route Sales. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I started out, I was in it for maybe 6 years, I think. And I started out with a small route and just grew the heck out of it, even faster and larger than I thought it was going to happen. I just kept chasing the growth. Chasing the having enough employees to keep up with it, and I like to keep good control over everything. So yeah, I had a good system in place for growth. Yes.
So I recently did a podcast where I talked about the cost of marketing, and it can be upwards of $800 to $1,000 a month in some cases, depending on how aggressive you are. And I mentioned in that podcast that it might be better for your money to buy a small route versus advertising. So can you talk to the listeners here, the pool pro who's thinking about expanding and he's struggling with advertising in his region because maybe it's really competitive and it's hard to really maximize that advertising dollar and make it make sense. So what's the benefit of buying a small established partial route? Maybe someone has too many pools, they're selling a part of it. You want to talk on that for a minute?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to address it more for people that are brand new into the industry or people that are in the existing industry already and wanting to add on?
Yeah, we could take it from both angles because I think some people are working a full-time job and they don't want to jump in right away with, 80 pools, which not a bad idea in some cases if they don't have the time. But you can address it from both angles. We can see where that goes.
No problem. So maybe we'll start with the person that's just getting into it for the first time that has zero experience. And honestly, that's probably 95% of the people that we sell to are people that have no experience because they come under our wing and we do so much for them beyond just selling them a pool route. We all for free. We help guide them going forward. We watch their careers. We watch them start small and grow. But I guess, from a realistic standpoint, people coming from any industry or any way of life nowadays, obviously they have families. I've had my daughter for many years. She's almost 18 years old. So I had this business going while she was younger. And I had to be concerned. And my main concern was, hey, can I make enough money doing this to leave what I'm doing? I mean, that's always of concern. So people like that, they can generally, if they're doing a pool route themselves and eventually handling their own repairs and parts and all that, which they can learn to do and get to that level, they can earn $100,000, $115,000, $120,000, dollars per year net for themselves in reality if they did everything themselves. So in other words, they would be buying themselves a really great job, but the only difference is, like jobs, This is very scalable. They have the upside potential is just unlimited. And I'm not just saying that, it really is. If anyone reads our reviews online for National Pool Route Sales LLC, people even mention what they've done. It's just unbelievable. So, but even at the very basic level, without any growth, a person can come in, like you said, you're spot on, 70, 80 accounts or so, 85, 90, 70 to 90 accounts is what an average person can max out while they're still doing a fantastic job out there and making really good money, because it's wildly profitable compared to other industries to get into the pool industry if you're just going to be doing something based off your own talent, and you get to have weekends off, and it's be at home to be with your children, or just to have do whatever you want to do at night. Now that's from that standpoint. People can get in at any level, David. They can get in with 30 accounts and work with our program to for free. I mean, it's a mentoring program, and build as quickly as possible. What I always tell buyers, I ask them right away, well, what is the income that you need right away to support your family? And probably 50% of the time, people need the full-time income, Dave. They say, well, I need 75, 80, 90 grand a year. All right, well, you need to buy a full-time route. But some people might say, you know what? I sold my business, or I did this, or, I came into some money, or I've got money behind me. I just want to do it right. I don't want to start out too crazy. I really just want to take my time. I'll say, well, start out with 30, 40, 50 accounts and take your time. That's 30, 40, 50% of a full week. And you can learn, become the best at it, grow it. That makes a lot of sense. So we don't ever push anything that somebody doesn't need. I just want to find out what works for somebody's life and their lifestyle and their family. And, I'm a 50-year-old guy. I mean, I've been around, I've done everything right or wrong that there is to do so far. So for me, I like to just be straight. Everyone knows me as a straight shooter. I say it like it is, good or bad, and I just tell the truth about, in an ethical way as to what they should do. And then we help people achieve their goals. And people do achieve their goals. This is a very good decision. I have pretty much never had anybody, and I've sold over, so many pool routes over the years to people. I've never had anybody call me up, I can't believe this. This was the dumbest thing I ever did. I don't get those phone calls. We would be inundated with horrible reviews if that were the case. So somebody brand new, David, to answer your question, getting into the business, I think that answers that question. Jumping over to what you said quickly about the people in the industry. I was in the industry. Very often people in the industry already don't like to buy pool routes, but because they think they could just pick them up themselves, and they can. However, sometimes something comes up. There's a situation. Maybe there's a shortfall with an employee. I spoke to a guy this week. The gentleman needs 35 accounts to fulfill. He's bringing someone over. He has 40 for him. He wants to give him a full-time route. So he doesn't mind spending the money and picking up 30 good strong accounts. So that makes sense. It all depends on the need and the income. Yes, people can go and try to pick up their own accounts. Starting from scratch is a very difficult thing to do, because you're chasing money for the first 9 months to a year. And the beautiful thing, David, about buying a pool route, and this is just the way it is, you make the money from day one of the closing. All the money goes to you. All proceeds and expenses are yours. So even while you're training, the profitability is yours. So that does make sense. And that's why it's better to buy a pool route. If you have the money to do so, it's better to buy a pool route and just have the money from day one and pay it back over a year or so. The return on investment. What's the point in starting from scratch and trying to be a world beater and knocking your head out, all over the place, trying to run around like a knucklehead, trying to pick up an account here, an account 15 miles away, then that person doesn't need you, and then they cancel. You're running around making no money. That doesn't sound like a great thing. If you've gotten to the point that you have enough income, makes a lot of sense, a lot of financial sense. I'm not an advisor, but just makes sense, common sense, to just buy something good. That's why people like buying from us. We have good, secure pool routes, a very, very safe process in place. We handle everything ourselves. I think we're one of the only companies, maybe, I don't know, that has our own escrow department in-house. Maybe not, but we do.
The scalability, and I'll touch on one point also when you talked about buying versus building it. I think that's the same in any industry. When you open, a brand new restaurant, you have an 80% fail rate because you don't have the clientele coming in. In many industries, I think that translates, and it's a logical thing to do versus building something from scratch.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then the second part of that is, the scalability, and we can talk about that all day long. This is probably one of the only industries next to maybe I guess, a plumber or a landscaper or a gardener, where you can actually do as much work as you want to build that up to get more profit and more money. And the scalability of this is something that we can't ignore in this industry. A lot of people talk about the negatives, and there are some negatives about the physical aspect and the weather. But the big positive, I think, if you're working at, Starbucks, or if you're working at a corporate job, there's only so much you can do to increase your income month to month. Whereas with a pool service, you get 10 accounts in 1 month, you add that to your route, you just increase your revenue by over $1,000 in 1 month. You can't do that in a regular 9 to 5 job.
Correct. And to that point, when I was doing this, just from personal experience, I used to love using my Microsoft Excel, just nice and simple. This is another thing. You don't have to spend a lot of money on any type of. There's no major investment in equipment and everything. It's very nominal, all the stuff you need. So I loved every month, David, for like 6+ years. I never had a month where I had where my rate of attrition was higher than my rate of growth. And that's who can say that? I mean, what job could you say that in, where every month you look at how much money you're bringing in, your profitability, and hey, I'm making more money. Hey, that power bill is now free forever. Hey, oh wow, look, now I can go on a cruise twice a year that I never could before, and it just becomes it's like a snowball effect. You're like, God, you just can't stop the growth. It's almost you have to literally be turning down growth. And I know many sellers that get on conference calls with buyers and they'll say, listen, about 2 years ago, I just, I wanted to keep my route at 90 accounts. I've turned down probably 100 accounts over that time. I'm thinking, I'm like scratching my head, like, my goodness, because the way I think, hey, well, I'll take those accounts, but I'll hire somebody, I'll have somebody do those, I'll do my route. And then, hey, I'll call up National Pool Route Sales and I'll pick up an extra $80,000, $100,000 for all that effort in that year. I mean, additional, plus all the income I made during the time. David, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, and I can see the business person behind that. And you're thinking, I'm the same way. I don't like leaving stuff on the table, but sometimes it is impossible not to. I understand the seller that can't pick up all those pools, and then there's a lot of tax advantages for being self-employed. We can talk all day about that too, all the write-offs you get. And I mentioned the marketing and advertising that would be an expense you could write off. So when you purchase a pool route, I'm not a CPA, you're not either. But I think there is a write-off for that purchase, right? Is that correct?
Okay, not speaking as a CPA, but just from owning many businesses in my life, sure, it's a capital contribution, your investment into it, and there's always going to be some depreciation and expenses. That's going to be between the buyers and their CPAs. Or you could just deem it a loan, and a loan that you personally loaned the company business, and the company pays that back. Once again, consult with a CPA to find out all the ways to do that legally and properly.
So let's switch gears real quick and touch on some of the emerging things in the industry. Now, there's the big companies that are out there. One that comes to mind that's really moving fast is National Pool Partners, NPP, and they're really acquiring a lot of larger service companies. A lot of service guys don't know if this is good or bad for the industry because we've never had anything like this happen before. Now, what's your thought on a big company like this emerging in this industry over the last year or two and kind of consolidating these big companies into regional big chains of pool service?
Yeah, great. That's a fantastic question. I happen to know that company you're speaking about. I know the people in it. I've been dealing with them from time to time with things. I know some of the other ones. There's like 4 or 5, big guys, as they say. So all I'll say to that is, I've never known any company, and I was in the pool business when people were coming in. Remember, when Pinch a Penny came in, and Pinch a Penny had, took all these stores. They haven't put people out of the pool cleaning industry, and they do pool routes. Look, the bottom line, we all do the same thing, David. We as pool guys, we show up, we apply chemicals, we clean the pool, we speak to the customers, we build relationships, and there's been competition around forever, right? So to me, these big companies, I wish them the best, right? But they're not going to be putting any of the people getting into the industry out of business. It's not going to affect their business. It just isn't. I'll give you a statistic, and I don't think many people know this, but there are 1.4 million pools in Florida. There are 1.3 million pools in California at this time, approximately. That's the truth. There's, on the average, a 7.5% increase annually, average per year. in the number of new pools based on new pool construction. So it takes 7.5% of growth. But you know that in 2021, like in Florida, there was a 23% increase in new pool construction permits. Just COVID, whatever. It's never stopping. It's always, the more things that happen in the world, it is always new pools for people to pick up. And honestly, if people do things the right way, like these people that might be worried about these large companies coming in, if you just do your route the right way and you treat people like family and you give a darn about people and human beings, treat them with respect, answer their phone calls, you're never going to have a problem. You're never going to go out of business. Never, never, never. I've never heard of it. And I'm doing this forever. And I would tell the people listening, don't worry about all that stuff. People sometimes talk themselves out of buying a pool route, but listen, I think about my lawyer years ago. If I would have listened my whole life, David, to everything my lawyer ever told me to do when I lived in New York and all these things, I had stores and all this, I would sit in the fetal position in the corner, never leave the house, David. I'd be crying. I'd be weeping like a little baby. I mean, my goodness, they scare the heck out of you with everything. That's a big problem in this country, too. I don't want to get political, but, hey, it is what it is. People scaring the heck out of everybody in this country who can't just live like Americans anymore. I've seen this happen, and this will subside like everything else does. Everything runs in cycles, right? If you look back over the years, there's always cycles. But no, do not worry about these big guys, David. No big deal. They're not bad human beings. They're entitled to, have the investors and do what they're going to do, because also in reality for the small guys, hate to say it to the big guys, but it's pretty easy to pick off some of those accounts if they really, really needed to, because sometimes they're not being given maybe that personal touch that the small guys can have, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you there. And I think there's so much potential for new clients out there. I have a friend who moved to the high desert of California, and the pool service guy came by and gave him a quote, and he's like, I'm not going to pay that for service. You're crazy, And my other house, I didn't pay half that. And so summer hits, 120-degree weather. He's out there trying to maintain his pool, and he actually just gets on the phone and calls the guy back, said, hey, remember me? Yeah, I'll have you do my pool. And so there's plenty of business out there. There's people that are too busy to do their pools. You mentioned the growth. I think in California, the local builder here, Blue Haven Pools, is a big builder in my area, and they're over 100 pools behind as far as putting the pads in. So they're way backed up on the bills. So there's sky's the limit in the industry. Now, with that said, there are some problems in the industry right now, and the biggest problem, and this is something that you probably never seen in your lifetime selling pool routes and being in the industry, is this inflation that we're facing here, where tablets have went up 100%, over 100% in price. And then you have chlorine going up 20%. Just about everything that you buy, from equipment down to chemicals, has really been inflated in this market for a number of reasons. We can probably go into that, but it's not necessary. We all know the supply chain issues and the biolab factory burning down and all those factors. What would you say to the pool pro out there who's dealing with this inflation? And what do you tell the potential buyers now coming into an industry where we've had flat, I think we have had flat prices on just about everything in the industry for a decade without this kind of increase. So what's your advice to the pool pro and to a new buyer?
Tough question, tough situation. What I've noticed when part of the problem too with the increases was in Louisiana, when the plant that really makes a large majority of those tabs that have gone so crazy in price, when it just got hit with just a series of unfortunate events. There was flooding, and then hurricane came over and knocked it even further. So that place, but the good news is I heard recently from several people I know in the industry that plant is either back online or getting right back online now, and they're going to start producing again. That should bring prices down soon enough, or in the future, next few months or so. You should see hopefully a downtick in the price of the tabs, which will trickle down to chlorine, because it's a type of competitor of the tabs, even though they're used differently. Like everything else in cycles, things go up, they come down, things go up. Stock market goes up, it comes down, it goes back. But everything ultimately should fall into line and in place with price increases. Okay, you need to do some price increases. Okay, that's what it comes down to. I speak to sellers all day long, with buyers and everything. Sellers, most of them by now, I don't know what you know about in California, but in Florida that I speak to mainly, most sellers have done price increases. They have. The ones who haven't are probably a little bit afraid to do it. It can be tough to do, but please understand that I'll give advice to some of the sellers. I'm not saying run out there and go nuts increasing prices. All I'm saying is what I've heard, and I don't know about you, David, and I'm going to ask you a question about it, what you've heard in California and whatever, but in Florida, the ones that have done the price increases have had no real blowback about it because people turn on the news. This isn't some manufactured thing that the price increase. Everybody understands. When my God, I went to get a cheeseburger. It was $18.99. I said, "What is that?" A full rack of ribs at the restaurant, which I love ribs, And I'm like, "What?" It was $19.99 for a full rack of ribs. Now it's $28.99. I said, "Oh my Lord!" But you know what? I still got it. I needed it. I wanted it. I want to live my life. We have to deal with the increases, but the way to stave it off, obviously, common sense would say, do an increase. And if you need to with the customer, so you don't feel like you're hitting them too hard with a $10 or a $20 increase right away, do it in stages. Lay out a little case and say, "Hey, listen, we want to just tell you that, listen, we want to share the pain with you a little bit, of all the increases. Please understand that it's costing us X amount more. So rather than hit you right away with it, like to do an increase over the next 4 or 5 months. It'll be each month going up a little bit so that it gradually hits you, and that's it. That's a suggestion that works. Or you can hit them all at once and just have a great conversation, but be ready to answer the phone call on some of those people. But this is a time that pool service companies have to work hard. It's a pretty easy business in general, but now you got to work hard to get those price increases. Fortunately, people are not canceling over it from what I've heard. What's it like in California?
80% or more have raised their prices. Across the nation, there was a survey, 63% of all businesses have raised their prices in the industry. So I think it's just a fact of life. What I think people get the wrong impression of as pool service pros is that for some reason we get the impression that we're on the top of the customer's mind. Like, okay, the pool service is something that they're thinking about and concerned about. Where in fact, they're more worried about, like me, my homeowner insurance going up, my auto insurance going up, the gas price going up. When you get a letter saying that your pool service is going up, by that point, you're on the bottom of their mind at that point. And so the pushback from the group members that I have, really no one has lost any accounts. Maybe 1 or 2 people cancel, which is a very small percentage. So I think we overthink it a little bit, thinking that, okay, we're so worried and concerned about raising our prices. But really, the pool is usually on the bottom or near the bottom of the homeowner's mind as far as pricing. And we're overthinking it in the industry. I think you got to realize that everything has gone up. You mentioned going out to eat. I mean, I just went out to a Mexican restaurant. I haven't been there in 6 months. It's out of my area. And it was $31 for 3 burritos and a drink.
Oh my
And I was
God.
like, what did I order? It's crazy. I don't think we need to worry too much about it. And I think pool pros overthink it too much, thinking that they're going to scare the customer away. And that's not the case. Raising the prices is the solution right now. There's no other way to do it. You can't cut back on the chemicals to a point. On the flip side of that, you mentioned the pool owner that's trying to buy 30 more pools for his employee. And that's a good situation where he has an employee and he's trying to take care of him by buying a partial route. Now, on the other side of that, the industry has gone through and is suffering just like everyone else. I have a friend in Arizona that was looking for 2 months for a service tech, finally found somebody that was 2 people applied out of the 2 months. And he picked one of the 2 applicants who wasn't the greatest. He was maybe like a C level kind of as an applicant. And he took him on and started training him. And he's okay. He calls him all the time. And he has a lot of trouble with time management. But there was nothing else he can do but hire this guy. So
Sure.
The labor shortage has hit every industry. I mean, my local Wendy's here and my local Panda Express, they don't have indoor seating because they don't have employees for the indoor seating. So they close it and lock the door. You can only go through the drive-through. This is really something affecting all the industry. So what do you say to the labor shortage, and how do you address that with people trying to hire somebody to do the pool route?
That's definitely an issue, and there's no way really around it. I would say that whoever you do have, just always, like you should be doing anyway, if you have people working for you, always consider their feelings and treat them like family. If you treat people like family, well, if you create a family feeling, a family atmosphere, Well, people tend not to. Maybe they'll treat you like family and help stay, and maybe they'll stay with you and get through this time. But you're asking kind of like more with the labor shortage, finding people?
Yeah, it's really difficult, I think, for a lot of companies to find a reliable service. Like, I mean, 3 years ago, you would have people at Pool Corp, SCP Superior, with signs up on the bulletin board, "I'm looking for work." You don't see that anymore. It's all gone.
What's such a shame, and even, I mean, I haven't seen it necessarily in this industry yet, but I've seen it with other things, even Burger King, where people are paying $1,000, $3,000, $5,000 bonuses just to start working at a place. It's a sad state of affairs in the country. Let's face reality. But however, it will turn around like everything else. Well, I do believe that as the government stops just giving everybody all the free money, okay, and then just incentivizing everybody not to work, people have to work. Okay, when they see that the gravy train has run out, they'll start coming back around, as they say. However, you just got to get a little bit resourceful. Okay, like if I'm not on a route, but I know that I would solve my problem for this if I needed to. I wouldn't stop until I did. I wouldn't allow my business to get hurt or not to have people. I would network. All right, how about old school networking? I mean, everyone's so quick just to place an Indeed ad or something like that. Okay, do it. Place an Indeed ad. Okay, have all that going. However, how about networking? You just talk to people. Tell, hey, listen. I mean, look, if you go around and you literally speak to everybody you see who's in the industry, from when you're filling up down at the local place, and you talk to the people behind the counter, say, hey, listen, I need somebody to work. Do you know anybody? If you do that to, let's say, 30 people in a week, chances are, okay, probability, and this is me just using probability and being like a little bit aggressive with things when I need it, 30 people, okay, you're going to get somebody saying, hey, you know what, I do know somebody, I do. And it's not like you need to turn around and hire 9 people. If you need one person, you should be able to get one person, just word of mouth. You'd be surprised. That combined with placing an ad and placing ads in multiple places, being persistent with it. Okay. I don't think you have to, I wouldn't want to incentivize somebody. I wouldn't even want to hire somebody who's only coming on board because I'm giving them $2,000 to sign up. They'll probably jump ship at the next $2,000, right? So I wouldn't trust that necessarily. I would stick to my guns and just say, listen, we had a great place to work. When all this downturn and in the country turns back around, I'll still be here. You'll have a solid position. I'm not giving it away to anybody. You treat them like family. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think also the benefits of working as a pool tech, as an employee, we need to advertise that more. And we don't do it as much. I mean, what other job can you start at 6 a.m. and be done by 1 or 2 in the afternoon?
Nothing. I don't know. Maybe something illegal.
And in that same respect, you're making as much as someone working a 9 to 5 job, and you're working 30 to 35 hours a week in a lot of cases, making as much money as that. So there is that benefit. And then let's say you have like maybe you have an event in the morning and you can just put your route later in the day, or if you want to do something else, you can stack the pools and do them a different day. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. So I think this is a great industry to get into. And I think another aspect of this that I don't know if people hiring the employee want to kind of advertise this, but it's something that as someone who was in the business, that you're actually training someone that can have their own pool business. Mm-hmm. The mindset is, okay, you have this employee working for you for 2 or 3 years. You can't stop them from being ambitious and going out there and trying to open their own business. And I think this is the only field you can't really do it in any other industry where you can actually become your own boss eventually. So there is that side benefit that is, of course, is on the back of everyone's mind and maybe front and center in the employee's mind.
All right, look, it's a topic I like to. All right, I'm just going to give my honest opinion about it, like I always do, right? So, and this is being a boss for many, many years of many, many people in other types of industries too. Anybody, and this is just speaking to business owners or people about to purchase a business. Okay, I've never worried about it, and the reason is, anybody that works for you. Okay, let's just have some logic to this. Okay, let's add the logic factor. If somebody's working for you and making $500, $600 a week, are they, if in today's day and age, when you really look at their financial picture, okay, they wouldn't be working for you if they could, first of all, if they had plenty of money to go and start a pool business, buy a pool business, because in reality, like I said, they're chasing accounts, this, that, and whatever. Okay. Now there's 2 factors. So one is I'm not worried about the person that comes to work who has the mindset to be a 10, 15, 16, $17 an hour worker. That's a certain mindset. I'm not worried about them jumping ship and being my competition. They can't compete with me. That's the way I look at that. That's the way I think most of these owners should be thinking. Okay, these are your accounts, because customers, if somebody ever try to jump ship, okay, chances are, okay, most people have the relationship with you as the business owner. No, people are generally, they have justice. They're justice minded people. Nobody likes people doing wrong to others. Okay, they just really don't. It's on our human nature not to like that, right? I mean, just look at today's society. It's all over the place like that, right? But people don't like that. So customers are people, they're human. So let's say that the guy named John is working for one of these people that owns a pool route with 70 accounts, doing 70 accounts for somebody. And he just decides to go out and, try to steal all the accounts. It's just not going to work, because he's not going to get all the accounts to switch over. He might get a couple of like really greedy people for $10 less. How much less can they do it for? Everything costs money. What are they going to cut the price in half? It's not profitable. So that makes no sense. So generally somebody might say, hey, I'll charge you $10 less a month. That seems to be maybe what might be said. And the person's going to say, well, what do you mean? But you work for the company. Yeah. But I'm going out on my own. I could do it $10 cheaper. The average customer is going to say, no, I'm sorry. I don't think that's right. I know. Or even, no, thank you. And they don't want to be involved in that headache, or that it just doesn't feel right to a person. And nowadays people saving $5 or $10 a month on, it's not going to make or break their lives. I don't think it's worth it when they have the stability of the insured company behind them that they've been dealing with for years. So that's aspect number one, in my opinion. Okay. And that's also what I've run into in my life and with other things when things were tried or anything like that. Okay. It's never hurt me ever under any circumstances. And I haven't heard of anybody ever calling me, you know what? Here, I'll make a statement. People who bought pool routes. I've sold 1,300 pool routes by now, personally now. I've never gotten a call, never, from anybody, okay, who bought one of our routes who said, I lost my accounts to the guy working for me. It's never occurred. Never. I've never heard of it. Okay. Sure. Somebody may have picked off a couple accounts here and there, but so what? Like I said, okay, if those customers are the types, a couple people here and there who are ready to jump ship over $10, you know what? It's like, it's one of those things. Sometimes it costs you that small amount of money to get these customers out of your lives. It's a couple of them here or there. Just focus on solid people who have your back, who are loyal. Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't live in fear. You are the owner of the company. You can do it. Don't worry about people trying to.
All I was saying is that training, you're giving this person skills, and if they have the wherewithal, and this is a small percentage of people, by the way, like you mentioned, there isn't a lot of people out there that can manage their own business. You're talking about marketing, you're talking about dealing with customers and billing, and that's not in everyone's DNA to be their own boss. So I think the fear factor of I'm hiring this guy and I'm giving all this skill, again, it is overblown, but there are some that may take that. But again, it's not something to be really worried about. I think the biggest concern is, like in California, they changed the law here, so you have to have an employee now, no 1099 subcontractors working your route. And so it's a big struggle in California because we pay 15% in payroll taxes. They pay 7, we pay 7 or 7.5 or whatever. Right. And so it's really expensive to have an employee. What do you think would be the solution for? I mean, you can raise your rates and everything. So I think in California it's more of a struggle than Florida. I think you can still have 1099 in Florida, right?
Yes. Correct.
So I think that's a bigger factor in my opinion, is the cost of the employee versus the labor shortage. I mean, how much money do you have to make per account to afford the employee?
Right. Well, you remember I primarily deal with Florida, but our company deals with all the states. Florida is just a tremendous pro-business state. Let's just face reality. Okay. So the governor here, DeSantis, tries to make it as easy as possible for people to just start businesses, grow businesses. That's why there's so many, companies doing that here and people moving here like crazy. But California is great, in so many ways also, and there's a booming business out there. I don't have a great suggestion for it based on what you're saying, because the employers have to match the taxes and, with the 1099s versus W-2 employees. Maybe I would say one thing is, okay, workers' compensation insurance. Okay, like I know in Florida, do you have that in California?
Yes, it's not that expensive because we're considered janitorial workers if you hire an employee.
Okay. Well, that's another, small percentage of payroll of your payroll expense that would cost to do that. So maybe something that you tell the employees, you say, listen, I'm going to be, paying you as a W-2 now versus 1099. You might net out a little bit less money per week based off of taxes, this and that. You could also alter your pay rate accordingly, maybe a little bit, but you say, listen, now you're going to have workers' compensation insurance, which means that pretty much, if something happens medically to you, while you're working, whatever, the state will cover your, bills going forward, ongoing for anything. And that's a great thing versus 1099. You don't have that, you're kind of on your own with that. There's reasons why. There's unemployment insurance. When you pay somebody W-2, it really was what was intended. Okay. People sometimes skirt the issue, I think, with 1099s. You're not supposed to have, in Florida too, you're not supposed to really have much control over what they do. There are so many laws involved with that you have to be very careful the way you do things. I never 1099 people really. It was always W-2. I felt more comfortable. I'd rather sleep at night, do things always the right way. So maybe California's a little ahead of its time with that, if nothing else, and is shifting into that way. I mean, I don't know that it's so bad. I don't know. I mean, I throw it back at you. I mean, what do you suggest for that?
Businesses are leaving California in droves. I mean, Tesla left to go to Texas. We have Pentair and Hayward, two of the industry stalwarts. They're closing all their warehouses and offices in California and moving out because just the cost of doing business here. So I think the only solution for a California company with an employee is to factor in how much is the cost for that employee per pool, and then you got to raise your rates accordingly. I mean, you're raising your rates for inflation, and then if the employee costs you $20 per pool per month, you have to just increase your rates to cover that. And if you lose some customers here and there, everyone's in the same boat. Like when you were in school and you were graded on the curve, you had some students that were like, you're killing the class because they were so smart, and then your grade was affected by how good they did. Kind of like that in California now, where there's really not a curve anymore. Everyone has to raise their prices. Everyone has to kind of compete on the same level playing field. And so those guys that are charging $65 or whatever, they can't survive doing that. And so with an employee, I think you can float that in California. The problem I think is going to happen is when the rest of the country adopts California's method, because it makes a lot of money for the state. I mean, the state makes tons of money on payroll taxes.
Right.
This is going to happen all across the nation, where you're going to see, and there is a rule that, or I guess legislation, I should say, that went through Congress where they want to make this kind of across the whole country. I forgot what it's called offhand. But if this is coming everywhere, then this is going to be a little bit of an issue. And I know the big companies already do this. The national pool partners, they have all their workers as employees. So they're changing that landscape too, I think. So we're moving towards a more employee-driven landscape, I think, going forward. The 1099 independent contractor is going to probably go away.
I actually agree. I do think that's going to be the case. And you do have the right solution. It is to figure out what the cost is per person, and then raise prices accordingly. Unfortunately, everything trickles down to the consumer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you go to get your ribs for $28 now. You have no choice unless you want to order an $18 burger.
Oh my God, I know it's crazy. Maybe I'll just have the French onion soup and just lose a little more weight.
Just go to Subway. Subway, I think, still has a $5 footlong. I'm not sure. I haven't been there. I don't eat there often, but
yeah, actually, that's a whole nother story. But that was one of the worst marketing things ever in the history, was getting rid of the $5 sub that they did.
That's too bad.
I just saw it on Netflix or something. It was funny.
So we'll stop here for today. And if you want to give them the information, Scott, and how they can contact you at National Pool Route Sales.
To contact me directly in Florida, you could just call the phone number 561 area code. So that's 561-708-4744. Okay. If they want to reach our office in general for routes outside of Florida, they can call 877, that's toll free, 877-766-5757. So they can call that number and ask for our representatives in any of the other states. They could also email me directly at scott@poolroutesales.com or visit our website, www.poolroutesales.com.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there will also be part 2, where I'm going to talk to Scott Roberts directly about some of the truths and myths about buying a pool route. So if you are interested in buying a route, at the beginning we touched on it briefly. So this one will be a more in-depth where I just ask him a series of kind of the myths that you hear, and then he's going to answer those questions for you in the next podcast. And if you're interested in listening to other podcasts, I did a series with Scott several months ago. We talked in detail also about the pool browse sales and other aspects of that. You can find those on my podcast site. Just go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on that podcast icon and just type in Scott Roberts, and you're going to see the other podcasts that I recorded with him. And if you're interested in enhancing your business, definitely check out my coaching program at poolguycoaching.com, including a discount on your general liability insurance. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.